as one discovery leads to another, often in unexpected ways. Newton's genius opened the door for future generations of mathematicians, physicists, astronomers, and other scientists who would make discoveries undreamed of by Newton and his contemporaries. By contrast, writing poetry is an intensely personal activity, often carried out in complete isolation. What, then, has poetry got to do with science? Despite the efforts of scientists who possess a poetic bent, there has been a growing trend in the modern era to assume that the humanities, which includes poetry, and the sciences are mutually exclusive. The persisting schism between humanists and scientists seems to be almost willfully naive. The artist who paints a portrait relies on the chemist that formulates the paint. Societies that want to build monumental structures and that possess the technical expertise to do so still require the artistic vision of architects to give shape to nebulous cultural aspirations. Similarly, from a societal viewpoint, writing poems is a useless exercise unless the work has some practical means of reaching an audience. Art and science are thus inextricably interconnected. In the complex, potentially dangerous environment of the 21st century, we are all immensely dependent on the fruits of science, both good and bad. Today's performance poetry event is but one small effort to help repair the rickety bridge between the sometimes antagonistic worlds of science and poetry. The poets you will hear today will share with you some wonderful science poems that they hope will celebrate science through poetry. We'd first like to start with a video by the poet Taylor Malley on the importance of speaking with conviction. It's called, like, you know.
I want y'all to give it up to my man, holding it down. Y'all gonna like this guy. I like this guy a lot. Give it up for my man, Taylor Malley.
In case you hadn't realized, it has somehow become uncool to sound like you know what you're talking about. Or believe strongly in what you're, saying. Invisible question marks and parenthetical you knows and you know what I'm saying have been attaching themselves to the ends of our sentences, even when those sentences aren't, questions. Declarative sentences, so-called because they used to declare things to be true, okay? As opposed to other things that are totally, not. They've been infected by this tragically cool and totally hip interrogative tone. As if I'm saying, don't think I'm a nerd just because I've noticed this, okay? I have nothing personally invested in my own opinions. I'm just inviting you to join me on the bandwagon of my own uncertainty. What has happened to our conviction? Where are the limbs out on which we once walked? Have they been chopped down with the rest of the rainforest? Or do we have nothing to say? Has society just become so filled with these conflicting feelings of that we've just gotten to the point where we're the most aggressively inarticulate generation to come along since, a long time ago. So I implore you, I entreat you, and I challenge you to speak with conviction, to say what you believe in a manner that bespeaks the determination with which you believe it. Because contrary to the wisdom of the bumper sticker, it is not enough these days to simply question authority. You gotta speak with it, too.
Moving on with the show, First up, we have Emily Berry performing Applied Astronomy by Esther B. Tiffany. In the poem, she plays a young lady who's had her heart broken by a bit too rational astronomer. Please welcome Emily Berry.
Well, he took me out to see the stars, that astronomic bore. He said there were 2 moons in Mars, while Jupiter had 4. I thought of course he'd whisper soon what frightful bliss 'twould be, to stroll beneath that frightful moon on Jupiter with me. And when he spoke of Saturn's ring, I was convinced he'd say that was the very kind of thing to offer me someday. But in a tangent off he went to double stars. Now that was most suggestive, so content and quite absorbed I sat. But no, he talked a dreary mess, of which the only fraction that caught my fancy, I confess, was mutual attraction. I said I thought it very queer and stupid altogether, for stars to keep so very near, yet not come together. At that he smiled and turned his head. I thought he caught the notion. He merely bowed good night and said, their safety lay in motion.
We now have Anna Ranchit performing Dark Matter by John H. Bidwell. In the poem, she plays a university professor explaining the mysteries of dark matter to her graduate students. A warm round of applause for Anna Ranchit.
The universe expands, we know, as Hubble watches all things go. The bubble grows but does not burst from some big bang that happened first. Since everything is leaving us, there is a question to discuss. Does all we know just go away, or is it coming back someday? The answer is, it all depends on how much stuff a Big Bang sends. For stuff has gravity, some force, that maybe could reverse the course. And yes, the stuff is slowing some. We don't know why, but we're not dumb. It's just whatever it could be that slows things down we cannot see. Invisible, we must admit. And maybe there's enough of it. Dark matter is, we speculate, the stuff that may determine fate.
Next up, we have Sumaya Nair performing A Matter of Degrees by Frank Kerner. In the poem, she plays an environmentalist who tries to make sense of the climate change debate. Please welcome Sumaya Nair.
What exactly is the greenhouse effect? What is it going to do? Are we going to have more continents, or will we lose a few? After studying all the facts, those of a scientific mind should get to the core of the matter, leave indecision behind. For years they said conclusively that as the planet warms, the people of Chicago will go to the ocean in swarms. It so happens the beach they'll have, the one to call their own, will be the Gulf of Mexico. If so, let us now for sins atone. But wait, there is a new belief, one not quite so harsh. It says the other theory is wrong. What it postulates is farce. The waters will not rise, for by analogy to water and rice, we'll end up with far less water than thought, but more by far of ice. This theory has as hypothesis that as the temperatures rise, the atmosphere will hold more water, and then it is surmised it will cool over the polar regions and fall as rain, then freeze, resulting in more water for sure, but no flooding, if you please. You would think that all of these theorists pontificating such decrees would cease their foolishness and stop fooling us by degrees. They can't even look at daily facts to tell us if it will rain, yet tell us heat will produce more ice. It's water on the brain. What if they're both correct? Then we're worse off than we think. We'll toast Chicago's new shoreline with icebergs in the drink. But I have a sneaking suspicion that neither camp is right. Before we drown, this earth will succumb to some other major plight. Thank you.
Our next poet is Behshid Behrouzi. She'll be performing a poem called Cosmic Cubes, We Are Not Chemical Scum. It's adapted from a blog post by our SciFest youth coordinator Raya Bidshahri. In the poem, Behshid plays a high school student who dares to disagree with the opinion of Stephen Hawking, probably the most eminent scientist alive today. Please welcome Behshid Behrouzi.
Hawking, that genius among men, with black holes and time warps within his ken, averred that the human race is just a chemical scum on a typical planet, round a typical star, in the outer suburb of a typical galaxy. But are we typical? Are we scum? Is this cause to feel despondent and glum? Here's a thought experiment every human should contemplate. Within your mind's eye, picture this cosmic estate. Divide the entire universe into cubes the size of our solar system. Cubes 18 billion kilometers high and just as wide. What would a typical cube look like? A typical cube in our universe would not be cluttered with glimmering stars. A typical cube in our universe would not be blazing with heat and energy. A typical cube in our universe would not be filled with planets and stars, comets and nebulae. No. A typical cube would be the opposite. A typical cube would be extremely dark. How dark? So dark that if the nearest star burst into a supernova and released more energy in a few seconds than the sun has in its entire lifetime, you wouldn't even see a glimmer. A typical cube would be extremely cold. How cold? About 2.7 Kelvin's cold. A fraction of a Celsius above absolute zero. Cold enough to freeze almost everything. A typical cube would be empty. How empty? Far emptier than you could ever imagine. An atom per cubic meter empty. In other words, a vacuum, an absolute vacuum, beyond anything we can achieve in a physics lab or science room. So, a typical place in our universe is cold. A typical place in our universe is dark. A typical place in our universe is empty. Earth is not typical. Humans are not typical. Life is not typical. We are not chemical scum. We are human. We exist. We are alive.
Our next performer is something of a thespian. Toby Masson is a member of the Dubai drama group, a director of many plays, and an actor par excellence. In this poem called Storm by Tim Minchin, he plays the role of a scientific-minded dinner guest who's driven to exasperation by the airy-fairy beliefs of his dinner companion. A warm round of applause for Toby Masson.
In a North London top floor flat, all white walls, white carpet, white cat, rice paper partitions, modern art and ambition. The host's a physician, bright bloke, got his own practice. His girlfriend's an actress, a friend of ours from back home. They're always good fun, so to dinner we've come. The fifth guest is an unknown. The hosts have just thrown us together as a favour because this girl's just arrived from Australia and moved to North London. She's the sister of someone or has some connection. As we make introductions, I am struck by her beauty. She's irrefutably fair, with dark eyes and dark hair, although as she sits, I admit growing a little bit wary as I spy the tip of the wing of a fairy tattooed in that popular area above the very air. And when she says, "I'm Sagittarian," I confess a pigeonhole starts to form, which is immediately filled with pigeon when she says her name is Storm. Now, to begin with, chatter is bright and light-hearted, but it's not long before Storm gets started. You can't know anything. Knowledge is merely opinion, she opines over her Cabernet Sauvignon, vis-a-vis some unhippily empirical comment made by me. That's not a very good start, I think. We're only on pre-dinner drinks, and across the room, my wife widens her eyes, silently begs me, be nice. A matrimonial warning hardly worth ignoring, so I resist asking Storm if knowledge is so loose-weave a thing of a morning when deciding to leave her apartment via the front door or via a window on the second floor. Now, the food is delicious, and whilst avoiding all meat, Storm happily sits and eats while our host, the good doctor, half pissantly holds court on some anachronistic aspect of medical history when Storm, she suddenly insists, but the human body's a mystery. Science falls into a hole when it tries to explain the nature of the soul. Our hostess shoots me a glance. She, like my wife, knows there's a chance that I'll be off on one of my occasional but fun rants. But I shan't. My lips are sealed, and I just want to enjoy the meal. And although Storm is starting to get my goat, I have no intention of rocking the boat, although it's becoming a bit of a wrestle. For, like her meteorological namesake, Storm has no such concerns for our vessel. Pharmaceutical companies are the enemy. They promote drug dependency at the expense of the natural remedies which are all our bodies need. They're immoral and driven by greed. Why take a drug when a herb can solve it? Why use a chemical when a homeopathic solvent can resolve it? It's time we all return to live with natural herbal alternatives. And try as hard as I like. A small crack appears in my diplomacy diet. By definition, I begin, alternative medicine, I continue, has either not been proven to work or been proven not to work. Do you know the name they give to an alternative medicine that's been proven to work? Medicine. So you don't believe in any natural remedy? On the contrary, actually. Before we came to tea, I took a natural remedy derived from the bark of a willow tree. A painkiller, virtually side effect free. It had a weird name. What was it again, darling? Masprin? Basprin? Aspirin. Which I paid about $1 for down at the local drugstore. The debate briefly abates as our hosts collect plates. When they return with dessert, Storm pertly asserts, Shakespeare said it first. There are more things in heaven and earth than exist in your philosophy. Science is simply how we're trained to look at reality, but it can't explain psychics or aura or afterlife or the power of prayer. I become aware that I'm staring. I'm like a rabbit, suddenly trapped in the blinding headlights of vacuous crap. Maybe it's the Hamlet she just missed quaffed or perhaps the 8th glass of wine that I've just quaffed. But my diplomacy died groans. The boar held back by its stones, but he held back no more. Look, Storm, I don't mean to bore you, but there's no such thing as aura. Reading auras is like reading minds or star signs or tea leaves or meridian lines. These people aren't applying a skill. They're either lying or mentally ill. The same goes for those who think they hear God's commands or faith healers who think they've got magic hands. By the way, why is it okay to pretend we can talk to the dead? Isn't that just screwed in the head? Lying to some woman who's crying because her child's died and pretending to be in touch with the other side? That's just fundamentally sick. just so we're clear, there's no such thing as a psychic. What are we, two? Do we actually think that Horton heard a who? Do we still believe Santa brings us gifts? Do we think Michael Jackson didn't have facelifts? Are we still so stunned by circus tricks we think the dead would actually want to talk to pricks like John Edward? Storm, to her credit, despite my derision, keeps firing off cliches with startling precision, like a sniper, using bollocks for ammunition. Look, you're so sure of your position, but you're just closed-minded. I'm sure you'll find your faith in science and tests is just as blind as the faith of any fundamentalist. Oh, well, that's a very good point. Let me think for a bit. Oh, no, wait, my mistake. That's absolute bull. Science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Faith is the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. If you show me that, say, homeopathy works, I will change my mind. I will spin on a dial. I'll be embarrassed as hell, but I will run through the streets yelling, it's a miracle! Take physics and bin it! Water has memory. While its memory of a long-lost minuscule drop of onion juice is infinite, it's somehow able to forget all the poo it's had in it. Show me that it works, and how it works, and when I've recovered from the alarm, I'll take a compass and cast fancy that down the side of my arm. Everyone's just staring now, but I'm pretty drunk and I've dug this far down, so I figure, in for a penny, in for a pound! The world is full of mysteries, yeah, but there are answers out there, and they won't be found by people sitting around looking serious, saying, isn't life mysterious? Let's sit here and hope. Let's call up the Pope. Let's watch Oprah interview Deepak Chopra. If you're going to watch telly, you should watch Scooby-Doo. That show was so cool, because whenever they found a church with a ghoul or a ghost in a school, they looked beneath the mask. And what was inside? The janitor, or the dude that runs the water slide. Throughout history, every mystery ever solved has turned out to be not magic. What's the idea? That there might be knowledge frighten you? Does the idea that an afternoon spent on Wikipedia might enlighten you frighten you? Or does the notion that there is no supernatural so blow your hippie noodle that you're happy to sit in the fog of your inability to Google? Isn't this enough? Just this world, just this beautiful, complex, wonderfully unfathomable world, how does it so fail to hold our attention that we diminish it with the invention of man-made myths and monsters? If you're so into your Shakespeare, lend me your ear, for to gild refined gold, or to paint the lily, or throw perfume on a violet is just bloody silly, or something like that. Or what about Saxmo? As trees are green, red roses too. Fine, if you wish to glorify Krishna or Vishnu in a post-colonial, bottled-up, labelled, packaged kind of way, that's okay. But here's what gives me a hard on. I am a tiny, ignorant, insignificant lump of carbon. I have one life, and it's short, unimportant. But thanks to medical advances, I get to live for twice as long as my great uncle's Nancy's. Twice as long to live this life of mine. Twice as long to love this wife of mine. Twice the years of friends and wine and sharing curries and getting snippy at good-looking hippies with fairies on their spines and butterflies on their... And, well, if perchance I have offended, think that this and all is mended, that it might as well be 10 minutes back in time for all the chance you'll change your mind.
We now have a video for you, a shot of awe, if you will. Jason Silva has been described as a wonder junkie, an epiphany addict, an ontological DJ, a remixer of wonder, and a poet for the digital ages. Here he is, rhapsodizing about finding your creative flow state.
to transform the world, our ability to imagine new possibilities, our ability to probe the perimeters of possibility, remix the present, to see into the adjacent possible, which Stephen Johnson refers to as a shadow future that hovers over the present state of things, a map of all the ways in which the present can reinvent itself. Creativity is just connecting things, as Steve Jobs says. And people who go into this creative zone, virtuosos of the imagination, those ecstatic technicians of the sacred spaces of human virtuosity, athletes when they get in the zone, scientists when they have their eureka moments, musicians, artists when they enter these flow states, jazz musicians when they're improv, Charlie Mingus as he rhapsodizes through a tumbling thicket of ideas with such a sharp and vital alacrity that it can take the breath away. These flow states are finally starting to be understood thanks to neuroscience. The part of the brain responsible for self-editing literally goes dim. So there is a kind of scrambling of the self. There is a scrambling of like the superego that's trying to like correct everything you do and censor and filter what is otherwise collective subconscious, active imagination, so to speak. And I think that these artists, these athletes, when they go into the flow state, you know, I'm sure that they've had their 10,000 hours of practice in whatever their skill is, but then they go into that flow state. Perfection is not just about control, it's also about letting go. They shut down their lateral prefrontal cortex and they enter the realm of the numinous, the realm of the imaginal, the realm where the dream becomes real. You know, that space, that headspace of flow is the place where dreams are born.
Our next poet is Yolani Aher performing The Blue-Footed Booby by James Tate. In the poem, she plays a naturalist on the Galapagos Islands who is fascinated by the behavior of that eccentric bird, the blue-footed booby. Please welcome Yolani Aher.
Lives on the bare rocks of Galapagos Islands and fears nothing. It is a simple life. They live on fish and there are few predators. Also, the males do not make fools of themselves chasing after the young ladies. Rather, they gather the blue objects of the world and construct from them a nest. An occasional gaulois package, a string of beads, a piece of cloth from a sailor's suit. This replaces the need for dazzling plumage. In fact, in the past 50 million years, the male has grown considerably duller, nor can he sing well. The female, though, asks little of him. The blue satisfies her completely, has a magical effect on her. When she returns from her day of gossip and shopping, she sees he has found her a new shred of blue foil. For this she rewards him with her dark body. The stars turn slowly, and the blue foil besides them, like the eyes of a mild savior.
Joining us on stage next, we have Hannah Woodhouse performing Tripartite Brain by David O'Neill. In the poem, she plays an enthusiastic primary school teacher who's sharing the wonders of the human brain with her little students. Please put your hands together for Hannah Woodhouse.
Our human brain is tripartite, part reptile, mammal, and primate, and often doesn't get things right. The oldest part of it's the snakes, the reptile brain that's all instinct. It bites and flees, bakes and makes mistakes. The next part of it's the mammal. It's like a dog or a cat. It emotes and fosters feelings, even in rats. The third part's the neocortex. It's the newest and some say the best. It thinks and plans, and it is the most complex. The neocortex just knows what to do, and it apologizes endlessly for the shameless goings-on of the other two. Okay, class, get back to your work.
We now have a special segment, a short series of science haikus performed by Anna Rawlings and Olivia Bennett. They play a couple of intrepid explorers who happen upon a collection of exotic and interesting science-themed haikus. Please welcome our young stars, Anna and Olivia.
Vibration is a motion. Decide which way it should go.
Some can tell the time by looking at the sun. I can't make out the numbers.
To some, solutions are answers. But to chemists, they're still all mixed up.
Humidity, when you're looking for some air, but instead you find water.
Some past animals become fossils, whilst others prefer to be oil.
Broken up molecules stuck with atoms. Broken up atoms stuck with explosions.
Singularity. Starship spirals inwardly. Blue photons escape.
Carrion birds scatter with each flitch of reanimated flesh.
Lifeless planet.
A scarecrow planted
By missing terraformers.
Next up is Kyle Cuthbert performing Damselfly, Trout, Heron by John Angels. In this poem, Kyle plays a butterfly catcher who happens upon a damselfly and is then moved to contemplate the cycle of the eat or to be eaten aspect of Mother Nature. Put your hands together for Kyle Cuthbert.
Damselfly finally folds its wings over its body when at rest. Captured, should not be killed in cyanide, but allowed to die slowly. Then the colors, especially the reds and blues, will last. In the hand, it crushes easily to a rosy slime. Its powers of flight are weakened. The trout feeds on the living damselfly on the far side of the stream. The trout leaps it from the water, and if there's sun you see, the briefest shiver of gold, and then the river again. When the trout dies, it turns its white belly to the mirror of the sky. The heron fishes for the trout. The heron is the exact blue of the shadows that the sun makes of the trees on the water. When you hold the heron most clearly in your eye, you are at least certain it is there. When the blue heron dies, it lies beyond reach on the far side of the river.
We now have on stage Aisha Khan, who will perform For the Conjunction of Two Planets by Adrienne Cecile Rich. In the poem, she plays a Victorian poet, ruminating on the mysteries of the night sky and the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus. Put your hands together for Aisha Khan.
Astrological hopes, and leave the skies to expert men who do not reckon horoscopes, but painfully extend their ken in mathematical debate with slides and photographic plate. And yet, protest it if we will, some corner of the mind retains the medieval man who still keeps watch upon the starry skeins and drives us out of doors at night to gaze upon anagrams of light. Whatever register or law is drawn in digits for these two, Venus and Jupiter keep their awe, wardens of brilliance as they do their dual circuit of the west, the brightest planet and her guest. Is any light so proudly thrust from darkness on our lifted faces a sign of something we can trust? Or is it that in starry places we see the things we long to see in fiery iconography?
Our next young performer is Inez Rose, who will perform Entropy by Ronald W. Hull. In the poem, she plays a personification of Mother Nature. A warm round of applause for Inez Rose.
Just as all energy, equal mass, sometimes in the future, sometimes in the past. So why is it with our world disappearing so fast? For nothing is permanent. On a universal scale, one side is vibrant, the other is pale. So if you don't cry in your beer, it will get stale. The world you see out there is in a state of motion. What appears to be solid undulates like the ocean. Gas, liquid, or solid is all just a notion. Champ quarks and pi mesons in a universe of their own spin violently erratic to their own space tone. Shape the world with movement and never leave it alone. If you looked deeply into the hardest stone, you would see it squirming like a termite's home, for all is temporal and on the road. So next time you see patina on a fine antique, it's entropy working, it's gold to seek, for all is nothing after its peak.
It's time now for another 2-minute shot of awe by everyone's favorite techno-philosopher and poet, Jason Silva. Here he is, waxing eloquent on the hero's journey.
Jean-Paul Sartre says, everything has been figured out except how to live. So perhaps the better question is not what are we to do with death, but what are we to do with life? Life exists in individual moments, and it is up to us to make sure that those moments are vast, interconnected, and grand, to make a masterpiece out of life, one that we would willingly live again and again for all of eternity. This is what we could strive for. And I love this idea of aestheticizing our lives, of italicizing our experience, of turning our story into the story, of seeing the universal in the specific, and sort of aligning ourselves with the archetype of the hero's journey, of trying to see a departure from the ordinary in every single instance, a chance to learn something new, a chance to leverage obstacles and learn from them, and meet people along the way that can teach us something. It's what the movie Eat, Pray, Love talks about, quest physics, the physics of the quest. If you believe and you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, life will begin at the edge of your comfort zone. If you're able to treat what seems like despair, what seems like hardship as an opportunity to reinvent yourself and to transcend your own limitations. As Stephen Johnson says, the world is full of clues and you can read your way through it. If you're able to turn your life into an art piece, if you're able to turn your narrative into the narrative, then you become that hero. You become the god of your own life. It's the archetype in every film. It's the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. And well, that's just rad. That's just a cool idea.
Our next performer is the youth coordinator of SciFest Dubai, co-founder of Café Scientifique Dubai, and pre-eminent science blogger Raya Bitshahri. She's performing The Anesthetic of Familiarity by Clinton R.D. She plays a young, college-going existentialist thinker who is driven to think about death and finds an exhilarating solace in simply being alive. A warm round of applause for Raya Bichafri.
We are all going to die. And that makes us the lucky ones. Some people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the sand grains of Arabia. We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively exceeds the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I, in our ordinariness, that are here. This is another respect in which we are lucky. Every century, hundreds of millions have been in its time, or will be when its time comes, the present century. Interestingly, some physicists don't like the idea of a moving present, considering it a subjective phenomena for which they have no room for in their equations. But it is a subjective argument that I am making. How it feels to me, and I guess to you as well, is that the present moves from the past to the future, like a tiny spotlight, inching its way to the gigantic ruler of time. Everything behind the spotlight is in darkness, darkness of the dead past. Everything ahead of the spotlight is in the darkness of the unknown future. The odds of your century being the one in the spotlight are the same as the odds as a coin tossed at random would land on a particular ant crawling from New York to San Francisco. In other words, it is overwhelmingly probable that you are dead. Yet despite these odds, you will notice that you are, as a matter of fact, very much alive.
We now have Adeline D'Souza performing When I Heard the Learned Astronomer by Walt Whitman. In the poem, she plays a graduate student who is bored by the facts and equations of science and finds scientific beauty simply by gazing up at the stars. Please put your hands together for Adeline D'Souza.
When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs and figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became, tired and sick, till rising and gliding, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars.
We now have a special performance by Shelly Pieris and Hilary Hay called Twinkle Twinkle Little Star Redux by Jane Taylor. Hilary plays a young lady thrilled and bewildered by the stars, while Shelly is a hard-boiled scientist who knows exactly what stars are. Please welcome Shelly and Hilary.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. When the blazing sun is gone, then he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light. Twinkle, twinkle, all the night. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
Then the traveler, in the dark, thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go, if he did not twinkle so. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, I don't wonder what you are. For by spectroscope can, I know that you are hydrogen. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, I don't wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, now we're learning what you are. For by spectroscope can, you're helium and hydrogen. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, I don't wonder what you are. Now we know that you went bust, fill the void with clouds of dust. Oxygen and carbon are elements made in a star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, what you made is what we are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wondered what we are. Now we know you're made of dust. Now we know you're just like us. Twinkle, twinkle, oh so far, now I know I am a star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wondered where you are. Up above I see you shine, but according to Dr. Einstein, you are not where you pretend. You are just around the bend, and your sweet seductive ray has been leading them astray. All these years, little star, don't you know how bad you are? An incandescent, full of gas.
Condensing to a solid mass.
Joining us on stage next is Sasha Nanda, who will be performing Spaceship Earth by Clinton R.D. She plays an astronaut who is moved by the thought of just how special a place planet Earth really is in the vast and hostile blackness of the universe. Please welcome on stage Sasha.
We live on a planet that is all but perfect for our kind of life. Not too warm, not too cold, basking in kindly sunshine, softly watered, a gently spinning, green and gold harvest festival of a planet. Yes, and alas, there are deserts and slums, there is starvation and racking misery to be found. But take a look at the competition. Compared to most planets, this is paradise. And parts of the Earth are still paradise by any standards. What are the odds that a planet chosen at random would have these complacent properties? Even the most optimistic calculations would put it at less than 1 in a million. Earth is 1 in a million.
Up next is Tahir Katawala. He will be performing a poem called Sky. In it, he focuses on the expansion of the universe. Please put your hands together for Tahir.
In the beginning, science and religion danced like old lovers. They kissed and twirled off into the darkness. Bang! The first few seconds of the universe. Everything is in the size of nothing as it expands outwards, space flowing behind it as it eats away into the nothingness. There is no such thing as heat. There is no such thing as density because it's been created as it goes, as the cloud moves out, creating the universe, leaving it flowing behind it. It's too hot for any type of atom, too hot for molecules, too hot for anything except its own existence. But as space moves out, as it expands and unfurls into the incoming world of spaces, and now there's a little bit of room for it to cool. And as things cool down, like candles emerge in our wax, bosons and quarks start coming together. And as they come out, they start grouping together. And from them, we get protons, we get electrons, we get neutrons. And from them, we get atoms. And the first and most common atom in the universe is hydrogen. That's all there is in this young galaxy. Now, the very first rule of this universe is that there is no such thing as equality. There's no even spacing of things as they move out. Things clump like little eddies in the street, and as these eddies move together, they start coming together closer and closer. Because the second rule of this universe is like attracts like, and as matter pulls in, we drive bits of hydrogen coming to where these eddies are. And soon, you have the first disk of the galaxy. And inside this disk, you have smaller disks that will later on become the solar systems. Now, it's the very heart of these itty bitty disks. More and more hydrogen keeps coming together. It gets heavier and heavier because there's more and more coming in. Until eventually, it gets to a point where it can't take anymore. Hydrogen come together. Boom! The first light of a new star. These new stars are insanely hot, bright white suns that blind your eyes. These first stars start coming together. Hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. And as it goes, we come up with kind of a combat between the pulling in of gravity and the pushing out of this brand new stellar wind. Now these young stars, they don't last very long, just a few million years. They burn so fast. But eventually, it starts to overcome because the most efficient form of getting energy is hydrogen to hydrogen. And as it goes, we start building other things. Hydrogen to hydrogen make helium. And as it keeps building things up, it starts to get less and less efficient. So eventually, the stars start to lose the battle between push and pull. And the inside eventually gets so heavy that it collapses and collapses again. Now, there's a couple of different things that can happen. In a medium-sized star with 1.5 to 3 times the mass of our sun, what will happen is this outer shell will begin expanding. Now, if there were planets in the first solar system that I'm thinking of, this expanding sun would eat everything as it pushes it away. Eventually, the inside core, which has already collapsed a couple of times, will collapse down to iron. And from iron, one final collapse. And at this point, you've basically turned the sun into a giant neutron bomb. BAM! Supernova blows everything away. Radiation and heat expanding.
We now have Bahar Ferdowsi performing Shooting Star. In it, she plays a grandmother who ruminates on the brevity of life and makes an analogy between a shooting star and our brief existence on this planet. Please put your hands together for Bahar.
Across the darkened dome of night, where sun kings reign till break of dawn, a shooting star darts fast and bright. Then, like a spectral light, is gone. It fades from sight and leaves behind no more a trace than passing wind. Yet now and then, some shooting star remains much longer in the sky. It gleams resplendent near and far, but just the same, its light must die. Its splendor shines a little more. Then, like a breath, its life is over. Thus every man, both great and small, whatever his wealth or mind or fame, must share the common lot of all and leave behind a fading name. However grand his life may be, it soon is just a memory.
We now have another shot of awe. Jason Silva is back, and he's epiphanizing about how humans are cosmic revolutionaries.
You know, with the advent of the commercial space revolution, with the fact that human beings are finally going to domesticate space travel, it's worth celebrating for once why we want to explore the heavens to begin with. And Marina Benjamin perhaps has the best line. She says, when we dream of space, we dream of transcendence. We dream of what we might become. The exploratory journey, that desire to break through boundaries, to probe the perimeters of possibility, to explore the adjacent possible, that is what it means to be human. We didn't stay in the caves, says Kurzweil. We didn't stay on the planet. With biotechnology, we won't stay with the limitations of biology. In fact, today, by leveraging exponentially emerging technologies, we're going to have computers trillions of times more powerful, navigating spaceships that are millions of times cheaper, taking us to space. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is going to take artists into space. What's going to happen when poets and artists look down upon the earth? What new reflections that will uplift the human spirit, that will thrust human consciousness towards the numinous might transpire when we keep pushing beyond all limits, when we get to Kubrick's Beyond the Infinite. The beings are born through the wormhole down down the rabbit hole. It's glorious. It's what Neil deGrasse Tyson says. Doing what's never been done before is intellectually seductive, whether or not we deem it practical. It's what we do. It's what makes us cosmic heroes, cosmic revolutionaries, not stooges conscripted to advance a natural order that kills everyone. So let us go forth.
Joining us on stage next is Avery Polenton with A Bad Day at the Lab. In it, she plays a frantic, anxious scientist who had just discovered that her lab monkeys have escaped their cages. Please put your hands together for Avery.
Today will live in infamy. I messed up in the lab, you see. I unlocked just one monkey cage, then had to run and check a gauge. And when I came back, I was quite shocked. 10 monkey cages were unlocked. 2 monkeys swung some ceiling fans, high-fiving with their feet and hands. 2 more had lit up Bunsen burners, and they balanced them on pancake turners. Another had 3 feet of hose, and he shoved it up another's nose. The last 3 chimps were down the hall, and that was the worst thing of all. They've entered a restricted space, the lab we call the cloning place. And it didn't take them very long to make things go completely wrong. They've mixed up all the DNA, how many kinds I cannot say. From birds, and frogs, and caribou. They've cooked up a genetic stew. A seething, glowing, bubbling mass of kangaroo and wild ass. Well, who knows what the result will be? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But here's a lesson for the ages. Always lock your monkey cages. For if you give them chance enough, they'll monkey with genetic stuff.
We now have Jamal Iqbal performing When Hadrons Collide. Please welcome on stage Jamal.
Thank you, Byron. A science student walks into a bar and the bartender says, "We don't serve science students here." So the science student goes, "I'm on a leave of absence." All right, I'll warm you guys up, all right? So I need some names from you guys. Give me the name of a scientist. Okay, say again, Stephen Hawking, all right. Stephen Hawking walks into a bar and the bartender says, "We don't serve Stephen Hawking here." But he said, "Wait a minute, you're walking? I want to drink what you're drinking, man." All right, give me the name of a compound. Chemical compound, chemical element. Sodium chloride, benzene, dihydrogen. All right, potassium permanganate, all right. Potassium permanganate walks into a bar and the bartender says, "We don't serve potassium permanganate here." And potassium permanganate looks up to him and says, "What happens when I give you decently, mate?" All right. Now, I need this to come from you, all right? I'm going to do something, but I need your help on this one, all right? I need you to clap your hands if you can, all right? All right? Cool. Well, I need you to snap and click if you can. All right? Cool. So what I'm going to be doing is when hadrons collide, in scientific parlance, hadrons are particles that actually create matter. They consist of quarks, mesons, baryons, and a lot of other ions. I'm not really bothered about it. I'm a poet. I'm going to talk to you about what hadrons mean to me. I'm going to be sharing some stories from my life. I'm going to be sharing some stories from the lives of a tattoo artist, a circus dancer. I'm going to be sharing stories about first love, and I'm going to be talking about you and I. And that's where I need your help. When hadrons collide, they're not very polite. I don't care if they're Swiss or cheese, that's none of my concern. You see, when hadrons collide, I can hear them. I can hear the hadrons in the back of my head. This mic can hear the hadrons, and if all of you close your eyes just for 10 seconds, you can hear the hadrons too. So please, close your eyes, because you can hear the hadrons collide. Watch. So keep this beat going in the back of your head, and I'm going to talk to you about hadrons colliding. When hadrons collide, it snows. When hadrons collide, it snows. It snows on the top of the pyramids, on the Tupi at Giza, but the wolf boy doesn't see it. The wolf boy doesn't see the snow on top of the pyramids, neither does the wolf boy in Gaza, because for the wolf boy, the snow and the hadrons colliding remind him of the red under the snow where his mother's A-type flows. He doesn't hear her song Fakrauni, nor as the wolf boy hears the thump of the hadrons colliding. He crumps, he drinks his bottle after bottle after bottle of poison, and he crumps because he's numb. He's numb because his eyes are dark as the snow, and his eyes are dark as the snow, and he crumps, and he hears the hadrons collide. And the hadrons remind him of the military, but he doesn't care because he crumps under the silk where Yusufova snows, and where Yusufova snows, it snows because hadrons collide. And when hadrons collide, you can hear them on the side of your heart as a murmur. That's when you can hear the hadrons collide at the street cafes where lovers meet. Mihao, Sheshe soon gives way to your selfie and mine. Mihao, Sheshe soon gives way to your selfie and mine. As I click pictures of you making faces and looking at me. As I click pictures of you making faces and looking at me. And clicking a picture of me, clicking a picture of you making faces and looking at me. As I click a picture of you looking at me, clicking a picture of you making faces as you click pictures of me. It's called selfie love. Have you ever tried it? Try the shutter romance, the blue camera his, the purple hers, cause mama don't do no red. The blue camera his, the purple hers, as hadrons collide, and at first the lenses kiss, then the spectacles come off, and finally the braces gliss. And as hadrons collide, they sometimes slow down. And if you look deep enough and look at your heart, you can feel them come together, move away, sway, come together, move away, sway, go to the right, come together, move away, stop, and then come back again. And that's the dance of the two lovers. As a man comes up to them, chomping on a cheeseburger, he grins and he gives them each a kiss on their chins, because they remind him of the dance he once doppelganged on the snow, on the Quebecois snow, where he and his wife first met, and hadrons collided, only there was no shutter romance. And hadrons collide, hadrons do collide, hadrons collide when the two artists meet, when the needle of the tattoo man pierces his skin and they have a conversation, and you hear the hiss, and you hear the rim, and you hear the constant sound of the hadrons as they go. hadrons collide, the two of them speak with each other. He tells her of the mother that wanted the permanent black eye because she thought that would bring her luck. Ma'am, I wish you'd stopped at a buck. And they talk about the man with the tattoos of the demons on his biceps and the deities on his arms so that he would not pine. And they talk about the woman in white as she drinks her yaga. Meister will soon be back. Meister will soon be back, stinking of brine. And the hadrons, they continue making the acrifer wine. And then as he writes, the skin gets etched black and gray under the epidermis that's pink. And they speak about their dreams, and they speak about the dreams that were once. And as the phoenix finds itself on a six-pack and Icarus pines, the hadrons continue to collide. Only you don't see them. You don't see the quirks of the anti-quarks. You don't see the mesons of the Masonic arcs. You do not see Byron, but I do not care because we are not in a Swiss tube and that's none of my concern. So for the last time I ask you, close your eyes. When hadrons collide, they're very polite. Hadrons mine, hadrons dine. Close your eyes and hear one last time, hadrons collide.
Next up is Frank Dullahan, performing the theory of the multiverse with brackets. Please welcome Frank on stage.
The theory holds that the Big Bang happened when two membranes in the multiverse touched. A hand drawn to another hand. So that it was not an absolute beginning, but an accident in our ongoing cosmic story. And at that point of touch, of hand grasping hand, a black hole formed on one brain, a white hole on the other. So that matter condensed and funneled through from the one to the second, ours, and exploded in light, time, and energy, the Big Bang, and raced out like a lover's heartbeat to form the galaxies and our small sun, gifting us with life. It is also held that for all of the matter in the multiverse, there exists its opposite, the bundled antimatter of everything we know. Electrons with an opposite charge. People who move backwards in time. So, when I find you strange, I have to place it in this context where everything is possible, where your double may exist on that other brain, getting everything that you get wrong right, but where everything that's right with you is not. Thank you.
And our final poet of today's show is Toby Masson, back again with A Million Spermatozoa by Aldous Huxley. Please welcome Toby.
A million spermatozoa, all of them alive, out of this cataclysm, but one poor Noah dare hope to survive. And of this billion, -1 might have chanced to be Shakespeare, a new Newton, another Dom, but the one was me. Thank you.
We will now conclude today's performance with a few final words from the director of SciFest Dubai, Rohan Roberts.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. Before we leave, I'd just like to say a few words of thanks. I'd like to thank our sponsors, GEMS Education and Meydan Theatre, and And our associate sponsors, Emacs, Fitness First, Police Times, and Events Brokers. And I'd also like to thank Anneka Reece. Miss Anneka Reece is a teacher, English teacher at Jumeirah College, and she's been working tirelessly behind the scenes, training the students, showing up for rehearsals. So a round of applause for our sponsors and Miss Anneka Reece. And also Lara Matossian, who is the lead coordinator of the Science Festival. She's been working as well with the poets and training them. Thank you, Lara. And I'd like to leave you with the most poetic thing I know. In the 1970s, NASA sent a space probe to take pictures of Jupiter and Saturn. It was the Voyager 1 space probe. It traveled for 6 billion kilometers, and it took its pictures of Saturn's rings and its moons, absolutely stunning pictures. And then it continued on its journey. Its mission was over. Carl Sagan, that most brilliant astronomer, had this incredible idea of turning the cameras on Voyager around and taking a picture of Earth from 3 billion kilometers away. Not 3 billion, sorry, 16 billion kilometers away. And Voyager 1 took that image and sent it back via the vacuum of space. And when we received the image and we processed it, we discovered the image had 500,000 pixels of mostly nothing, just the blackness of space. And of those 500,000 pixels, Earth was just half a pixel. So the next video, the closing video, is Carl Sagan talking about his emotional reaction to that poetic image.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization. Every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam.